On social media platforms today, quality content often goes unnoticed. On DEN, users get paid for the creation, evaluation, and curation of quality content. Content creators are rewarded based upon the engagement and reach of their post or comment. Content evaluators are rewarded based upon the speed and results of their predictions about which content will trend or go viral. Community owners are rewarded based on engagement within their community. On DEN, quality content pays.
Hello everyone, welcome to Super Happy Dragon Lucky. This is episode 0x4D. It's the 78th episode. This week, our number go up. We're going over the amount of Ethereum locked in the Ethereum 2.0 contract. And sorry, this is amount of Ethereum locked totally in DeFi. Sorry, we flipped things last minute. So this week, number go up. The analyst forecast is number go up. It's a very interesting thing because seemingly this is really taking off, decentralization itself and use of all of the new tech that's available out there. Really amazing stuff. We've been introduced to a lot of it by some of our team because we're running out all of the stuff for DEN, and it's just amazing some of the things that we can employ to help us build that community out much faster than we could have done, let's say 3 years ago. So next up, so we're going to go a couple of updates before we bring the guests on. We have for DEN, the LCP, the layer creation process proposal phase is ongoing, and we have more than 50 proposals already made. Do go through and read all the proposals before making a new one. We do expect that the voting phase should be coming next week, where you'll be able to actually vote with lore on which layers should be created next for community and have partial ownership therein. So it's a pretty interesting process and a very interesting effect. We've already run through a few beta versions where we used energy as the scarcity. That with lore, that is layer ownership rights, it'll be the full and final form of scarcity, where it's a real lore to lot conversion. Anyway, sorry if anybody doesn't know what that's about, but it's pretty exciting stuff. Go into the LCP layer and read the process rules. Two things we have to come up with before we roll that out are, number one, how long should the LCP voting phase run? We're thinking a week right now, but it's going to be a community decision. And how many layers should be created in this first process. We want to keep it a little limited so we don't go overboard, but one way or another, we do want to have community feedback as much as possible. Speaking of which, the update for DEN governance, and DEN governance was rolled out last week. We actually, on the show last week, if you want to rewatch it, we show how to actually acquire a governance token for the 2021 governance layer. And it's basically all about locking up liquidity for either matter or lore to the DEN tokens. And there are 20 governance tokens for each of the actual business entity. The business entity has 20 lot tokens, but matter liquidity will have 20 and lore liquidity will have 20. So our real goal is to get the community at least at parity with the entities, and that to do that we need to at least have 20 other holders. And it's very interesting. As of earlier last night, we had I think we had 10 total that were out there, but right now it looks like there are 2 of 20 governance lot available for lore, and 13 of 20 for matter. So that's very interesting that many sold that overnight, because that means, let's see here, I believe that would be almost enough to counter and overrule the business entity, which is kind of what we want, because in the end I want to have to make sure we get good distributed feedback for all of the decisions. And that's, for anybody that doesn't know, that is for all decisions related to governance of the algorithms, structures, data, and policies even of DEN, so of the platform. So anyway, there you go. It's going to be a fun thing. We're probably, our goal is to start with some of the votes this week, and we're going to have a preliminary process. We don't have the full final phase of governance rolled out, where there will be an interface for decision making inside of DEN, but that'll be coming soon. And we're at least going to get started with making some decisions for some changes that are warranted. So anyway, that's it for the updates. Thanks a bunch. And we're going to be right back with guests after this.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
All right, we're back. And today we have Dr. Albert H. Carlson, PhD computer science, holds 8 patents in polymorphic cyber engines, and chair of the Quantum Encryption Committee, right?
That's right.
Hopefully I got the right. Okay.
That's right.
Very good. All right. Michael De La Garza, founder, president, chief executive officer, and chairman of AQED. His prior experience includes working CIO, CTO for Texas Regional Hospital. Is this correct?
That's correct. I spent 30 years in healthcare. So.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. And then Phil Abraham, our friend and founder of Cloudface Technologies, former supply chain executive at GM, and Dragonchain's newest board member. Hey, Phil.
Hi.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So let's start off, and a note to everyone out there: I am not a professional interviewer, so apologies in advance. Michael, can you tell us about your background and where you got to where you are?
Thank you, Joe, and I appreciate being on the broadcast today. My background is I spent the last 40 years in the software business, specifically about 30 years developing and starting companies in the medical software industry. Practice management software, EHR systems, EMR systems, RAD packs, all for radiology. Basically anything involved in running the hospital, that's a software platform that we started, we ran. We had 8 hospitals on our platform, about 4,000 doctors total. And we developed the first claim scrubbing technology. So I've spent a lifetime in that field. About 10 years ago, I met Dr. Carlson. We had developed an electronic medical record system in the cloud. It was called CloudMD. Kind of predates everybody in the cloud. We had that name, I think, 14, 15 years ago. And I was looking for, was building a regional hub to store data in Houston, Texas. And I leased out a 110,000 square foot warehouse, loaded in my servers, and we started archiving data for hospitals and doctor offices. We had 8 hospitals connected, 4,000 doctor offices. And I went to get insurance from AIG to offset this new law called HIPAA and the precursor to HIPAA. And AIG came back and said it was going to be $5 million to insure that data. And I said, how'd you come up with that number? What was the risk? And they said, well, it's a number that we're comfortable with. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just something. That's when I knew there was going to be a major problem, because I'm a little guy in Texas. You go out to some of the larger chains, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, some of the large Methodist hospital chains, Presbyterian, on and on and on, HCA, you can see there's a major problem here because they're all self-insured. They get one hit. They could have a $200,000 fine, or they could have a $2 million fine or an exposure. So I reached out to my attorney in Las Vegas, and he happens to be Dr. Carlson's brother-in-law. He introduced me to Al, and we've been working together ever since. And we started a couple of companies, I think 4 now, together. And I'm the business end of the operation. I'm the business case. As you know, Al is a encryption genius, security expert, and we've tapped and started developing out his algorithms into products and technology. This has lasted over 10 years now, and we're at a point now where the market has finally realized that zero trust really means zero trust. And we knew this 8 years ago, and nobody believed us. And all the trips I made to DC, Phil's been with me in DC, Al's been there to meet with the federal government, different agencies. No one took us seriously. Yeah. And now with SolarWinds and all the other FireEye and all the other hacks that have happened, and those are only the ones that we know about. They're not even telling you about the ones that we don't know about. Oh, yeah. So this has been my passion for the last 41 years. Al and I we collaborate very well together. Phil and I have known each other for a number of years. Phil knows my background in healthcare. And so, once I saw the size and the scope of what this was going to be, the healthcare kind of became secondary to the overall market. And so we put all our focus into not specifically being industry driven, but driven by the market. And the market actually, starts with the federal government setting standards. And we know all the standards that are out there now are broken with quantum. And so Dr. Carlson and I, 5 years ago, started working on the quantum end of this. I'm sure he was thinking about it long before then, but it gave us the opportunity to kind of refocus our energies in a different direction. Conventional computing wasn't going to be stable in the future. And 5 years ago, we made the proclamation that all encryption was broken with quantum, and nobody believed us. And now Al can tell you that it's all math. And if you have enough power and time, you can break anything. And so what we try to do is make sure that it's hard enough that it's not worth the effort to try to break it. And that's been kind of the bedrock of what we're doing, is to stay not one step, but 20 steps ahead of the bad guys by making it so unusual, so different looking, so complicated that they actually think it's noise, that we've created something that's worthless. That's what the Israelis at the IDF told us that 5 years ago, that what we created was a monster and that there's no way this could work. And yet we sent them files that were encrypted using our technology. And Unit 8200 of the IDF came back and said, it's garbage. And then we decrypted it for them live, and they couldn't believe it. And so we've been tested by the best in the world. Everyone that's tried to break us, whether it's a man-in-the-middle attack, brute force, whatever you want to do. We had one company, and Al can give you the exact numbers, but they spent a month using racks of AWS hardware to break into one of our files and gave up, and it was astronomical number of brute force attacks. It's in the quadrillions, correct, Al?
Yes.
So this has been my passion. This is what I do, is start and build companies. I meet interesting guys like Phil and Al. And, you know, the beauty of this is we were right 10 years ago. We were right 5 years ago. We're right today. And the whole world is moving to quantum. The quantum internet is going to change everything. It's here. Chinese have it up and running today. I'm sure we do too. The problem is that you need ironclad encryption for that. And I think we're the only ones that meet that you don't have to spend $1 billion to recreate. So, you know, AQUID was the foundation of allowing us to do things in a private mode without having all the public pressure of having to meet deadlines and profit time margins. And so this allowed us to collaborate with those individuals that we chose to continue to work with. We have a group of senior engineers. We have some young engineers that work for us and programmers. Dr. Carlson is leading the group. We have a few other experts in the industry that we can't name. But we're at a point now where the maturity of the technology is there. It's commercially viable today. The demo that you'll see later is just a fraction of an example of what Al's capable of doing. And I'm not tooting his own horn, because I've been around this man for a long time, and I've been in rooms where the smart people look dumb and their eyes were glazed over. And so when Al speaks, he really speaks from an authority standpoint. He really has the pedigree, the mindset, and the genius to be able to pull this off. And, you know, when you go to places like RSA, the big conventions, you go to some of the industry-only specific technology and security conferences, they're all selling old technology. We're selling bleeding edge, leading edge technology that the world has never seen. And when you have to have a PhD and you have a room of PhDs and Dr. Al is explaining to them why this works and that doesn't, it's amazing to watch these folks. You know, they're just flabbergasted that this is, it's not that it's simple, but it's explainable in a way that the average person can understand it. And that's unique, because math, especially when you get into discrete math that Al deals with, you're on a different level. And the average cyber guy has no clue what Al's talking about. So that's my background.
Right on, right on. Now, it's really difficult to be so early. I know that, right? It's like so early to a market. It's a good thing though. So, you know, positioning is.
We were 5 years premature, yeah. But you know, here's the thing: it's better to be the first or the second than the 10th.
Oh yeah,
and we now have a name. Dr. Al is a world-renowned expert. Everyone that's peer reviewed him knows that when he speaks with authority. So
excellent, excellent. So Dr. Al, so you were on what? Was it 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago?
I think it was 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Everything's a blur. Everything's a blur. Things move so fast nowadays. So it was a popular episode. A lot of people really reached out and said that was a lot of good info. So thank you for that. And so, you know, what are you currently working on? You know, and what's new?
Okay, well, I'm working on a lot of stuff right now. Basically, our big job is we're integrating a final demo that we've got that includes compression, polymorphic RNGs, variable sharding sizes that occur on the fly, adding more encryptions to the library, and something called the optional data camouflaging. We've been working very hard on data camouflaging, which is a way to hide a transmission inside a transmission by actually damaging the transmission as it goes. And we're working on this and trying to make it smaller so that it goes into IoT, so that we can put it into IoT. The new stuff we're working on something called a vertical geometry encryption, in which we create a stack of information and we use a downflow of that information to interlaced encryption throughout a message. It's really interesting. We're also working on something called generative adversarial neural networks, and we're working on adding neural networks into these security applications right now.
Wow, nice. That's great. Okay. Phil, so my question for you is, you know, what's new? What's new on last? But also, what's your favorite use case that you and Trey are working on, or talking to people about? Because I see so many things coming across from you and from Trey, and I don't know, every one of them's exciting to me. I just want to see, where you're thinking, the best stuff is coming from or going to.
First off, I didn't want to have to follow Dr. Al, but I did. So, one of the interesting things that I'm seeing is being on all these Dragonchain calls with the potential clients. And after you, Joe, get done explaining some of the functionality of Dragonchain, to hear the customer say, wow, this is easy to use, very scalable, and it's priced very nicely, and it's fun and fast. And so one of the new things is, every day I'm taking notes on the customer's reactions, and anyone that deals with technology, they know that most implementations of some type of new technology, it never works out right. It's choppy, it stumbles, it falls. And the Dragonchain rollout is amazing. And then the interoperability piece is amazing, especially because that's the piece the customers have problems with. Their end can't work well going into a technology or going into the blockchain. And so the patent on interoperability is phenomenal. And then the last couple of days, we've been discussing the impact blockchain and certainly AQUED's cybersecurity is going to have on ERP systems like Oracle and SAP. I think Oracle and SAP are asleep at the wheel because they are doing 1970, 1980, 1990 stuff. And over here, we have people saying, we like the Dragonchain interoperability patent. It's very secure. They're going to have the quantum safe functionality to it. And we can get things rolling in a day. So that's kind of the new thing that we're all talking about right now. You might be muted, Joe.
Thank you. I was echoing. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's I'm not supposed to do that. See? See? It's all about integration in the end, right? If it's easy to integrate, if it's familiar to the people that are already working in those enterprises, everything is easier. So yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Michael, the current state of enterprise cybersecurity, what are the greatest needs? Is it a scary place right now?
I think it's a terrible place if you're a CISO right now at a major corporation and you're looking at risk on, risk off. If you do nothing, you're a victim. If you do something, you're a victim, because most of the technology out there is now 5 or 10 years old. Any bleeding edge technologies, most of these companies have shunned because they didn't want to take the risk. We were explaining, Dr. Carlson and myself, 5 years ago and up till this week, that the federal government, which is the largest consumer of technology and spends the most amount of money on cyber, is asleep at the wheel. And the SolarWinds, they knew there was a problem there for a long time. The federal government knew that there was a problem with patching technology. There was a problem with still running very old processors. We know that pre-Pentium class processors are still running out there.
Wow.
And it's a fact on mission critical devices.
Yeah.
And type 1 and type 2 encryptors, which if you don't know what that is, type 1 is what the nuclear codes and things of that sort are on. We know that probably all 12 of those algorithms are broken with a quantum computer. So nation states today have quantum computers. If you've got enough money, you can buy your own. And, for $4 or $5 million, you can have a nice quantum computer now. So the problem is that we have to rethink the entire platform. The foundation of cybersecurity is broken. It was built on an idea or a concept that would never be enough computing power to break modern algorithms, which was totally wrong. The mathematicians that are forward thinking like Al are folks that understand that all of this can be broken with enough computing power. So we took a different approach at Aquid. You know, this time around, and we've built a number of companies together. This time around, Al, myself, we're playing the long game, which we weren't looking for an immediate fix. We were looking at the industry as a whole, whether it was IoT devices, IIoT, MIoT devices, whether it was looking at the platforms that companies were running on, and how they connected. And so we're at a point now where we believe that data arrest is the greatest threat. You have a depository of information like the federal government does, like large hospital chains, like large banks, anybody that stores massive amounts of data, which is everybody, because of the engagement with the consumer, engagement with other customers that are non-consumer based, business to business and so forth. We now exchange so much data and we mine so much data that it's very easy to spoof some data, send that to a company, they open it, and now their files are exposed. And so with the backdoors, with the Chinese software, Russians, and the dark web, this stuff is all out there now. And so we took a different approach that everything needs to be encrypted all the time. And if you want to use that data, it's decrypted for your use and then re-encrypted when you're done. So data in motion, data at rest, and then all the data that's moving through these IoT devices. That market is only going to exponentially grow. And so we were looking at a foundation change where we looked at how Aquid would be able to use and be consumed by everything, not by just, so whether it's a cell phone, a smoke detector in your home, an Alexa device, or it's your talking car, any of that stuff, any of the communications, 5G, 4G, doesn't really matter. The problem is the world is not replacing equipment at a rate fast enough to patch all the holes.
Right.
And so when I tell you I've been to customers for the military that are using 386 computers, you would be shocked, but they're still in place.
Yeah.
And so how do you fix that?
Yeah.
They're still running and they're mission critical. And so drone technology is another area where we spend a lot of time looking at that with military contractors, prime contractors, and they know there's a problem. The military knows there's a problem. Part of it's an educational issue that you have to expose them to technology. And then the other thing is we have a lot of people in decision-making levels of government that have no clue what they're doing. They're just basically signing on the dotted line. And they don't know what they're doing. And they've wasted billions and billions of dollars on failed technologies. And we went to a customer a few years ago. I think this is a really good analogy. A couple of years ago, major customer, they recently were hacked. And we demonstrated our technology to them. And they came back and said, this is great technology, except we would shut down our business model. Your technology would shut down our business model. We need people to hack the technology because then we come in and remediate it and put our technology in place. Not saying that it's better. It's just that we can fix it on a temporary basis. And so that was kind of the mindset of not believing at first and then believing, but then saying, well, it's too hard to integrate. When you talk about integration, and Phil was speaking to that, this is very easy to integrate. It's simply when you're making a call for encryption, you call up Aquid instead of whatever you're using. And this is not difficult to install. It's not difficult to use. And you have better than military grade encryption. And Al can give you the numbers on that. But we are so far ahead of the game with whether it's the data camouflage, the polymorphic RNGs, the polymorphic encryption, the compression that we're using, all of those different items, and there's at least 24 more that we haven't spoken about that are all in the pipeline with our company. And so I think of us more as an R&D without being this major pipe of information coming out. And then we're just trying to catch the stuff that we think would be commercially viable in the next 1 to 3 years. And then we have some longer 3 to 5 year projections. And so that's the basis of what we are. We're really an engineering firm that happens to sell software.
Nice. That's a good model. It's a good model. You have the you can identify the need and just position yourself. It's really good. Okay, Al, I have a question. Yeah. How serious of a threat currently today is quantum on the day in day out normal things, and how serious do you expect it to be in 5 to 10 years? And this would be something in terms of which types of systems are most likely to be attacked, given that it's nation states and or multinational corporations that have these capabilities, right?
Well, strangely enough, it's the people who have what's currently the strongest stuff out there, PKE, PKI, that are the most vulnerable with quantum computing. Quantum computing's been around. We've been in the post-quantum environment since the year 2001. And what people don't realize is that PKE, PKI is built on a model that is very, very strong in the classical computing environment and is very, very weak with quantum computers. The systems out there are quantum candy. And of course, what did the government build everything on? They built it on PKE, PKI, which is simple. Shor's algorithm just rips apart PKE, PKI stuff. And so we have to go back to the symmetric algorithms, which are what we typically use in the classical environment for non-government use. So as a country right now, with our present state of technology, we're extremely vulnerable to what's happening with the quantum computing and quantum attacks. The stuff that we built here is that I'm used to working with in at Aquid and at other places is actually much stronger against that and will resist the quantum attacks. And all we have to do is just about double the size of the key space, the effective key space. And with a polymorphic system, we actually multiply the key space by a factor of about 3,000. So we're actually much stronger against that. So the stuff that I'm used to building is very, very strong against what's going on. But the vulnerabilities that we have now out there are just huge.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yep. And Phil, where when we are talking to prospective customers or integrations, where do you see the most interest and or the most need? Sometimes, or is it a case that people often don't know that they need this particular capability with security, or is it something that they're already clamoring for it?
What I have noticed, I've noticed a significant change in the last, 6 to 10 months. It seemed like maybe a year ago, everybody was kind of in a zombie-like state when the discussion turned to cyber protection. Yeah. And there was no punishment. If like a hospital gets hacked, nobody ever gets in trouble, and all the patients' visa information, everything gets stolen, but nobody ever got in trouble. So it's kind of like a zombie. Who cares? What I'm seeing now, very significant. Every single call I'm on, and I'd like to talk about supply chain and things I'm strong in, they stop me mid-sentence and they switch over to cyber. Every call I'm on. They say, Phil, we're going to get in a lot of trouble now if we get hacked. And a lot of times I tell them, I say, listen, well, you're in a lot of trouble because you're probably being hacked right now as we're speaking. And the little hackers are running all around your system, and they just haven't decided like a bee to sting you. But they're all in there. I can guarantee you they're running around your system. So what I've noticed is every single call I'm on, whether I like it or not, jumps over to cybersecurity, and that's it. That's my whole life now. So then I go back, and by the way, one last thing, I used to tell everyone that my research showed that it's coming through the supply chain, all those suppliers and vendors, and everyone would say, well, there's too many of them, and there's not a functional cyber solution that we can roll out to everyone. That's what they used to say. Now they're saying, hey, Phil, we now accept the fact that it's coming, and we need to merge two disciplines, cyber and supply chain, into one. That's what I'm hearing, Joe.
Very good, very good. No, that's you imagine that makes good sense. I mean, the cyber should be fundamental to pretty much any use case, but often it's not. It was brought up IoT earlier. I actually didn't get to throw that in earlier question for Michael that I've known for a long time, and so we've actually tried to deliver a couple of frameworks, and I don't see the interest there enough yet, but IoT firmware as an example. IoT is exploding, right? And any project that anyone's ever been on that is, an embedded systems or an IoT project, at least for me, every single project I've ever been on, security was always the last thing, is the afterthought. It's kind of mind blowing because, I understand if it's a medical device, maybe not actually, but consumer electronics devices, it was crazy to me that, okay, yeah, we're just going to roll this out. Oh, shoot, what are we going to do about security? And they would usually bring us in last minute to help them with that. And this is before blockchain, right? Anyway, it's going to have an effect on the things that we're doing with you guys, that all those devices out there have to be secured, and it can happen after the fact. So anyway, Michael, and by the way, I think that I mispronounced AQUID. So is it AQUID?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So can you tell us, what is AQUID all about? What's the vision? We know the model, but what's the big picture?
Well, let me first tell you why it's called AQUID. It's Advanced Quantum Encryption Design. So that was the foundation of what we decided to do. Secondly, the vision was that we believe that spending $1 billion to create a quantum encryption technology network was ridiculous when you can do it. It's all math. I'll tell you, it's all math. And so our scope, vision, forward-looking statement, if you will, was that you don't have to spend $1 billion to have security in a quantum environment. You just have to do it in a different way. And when you were talking about IoT a minute ago, we talked about this, and there's a project on one of Al's PhD students that we said that the foundation of all IoT, IIoT, MIoT devices had to be changed, and you had to build security had to be the foundation of what you build on, not the other way around. You build your program on top of security, not security being an add-in. And so if you build it that way, then these devices can be secure. So, the second and third and fourth generation of IoT devices, which are coming out now, still are based on technologies that we believe are flawed in a quantum environment. So getting back to the quantum vision, Dr. Carlson and I spent a lot of time speaking to people who were, quote, industry experts on quantum. We found out that they're really not experts. I mean, there's a handful in the world probably, but they really didn't understand quantum encryption or what that concept meant. They didn't understand how to apply a quantum encryption in a conventional environment. They didn't understand that algorithms themselves do not make them secure. It's how you apply the algorithms. So going back and looking at the poly RNGs, the random number generators, the compression and all this, what we try to do is to take all of those individual pieces, turn them into a program that would allow the average individual to encrypt data securely, whether it's conventional or quantum, and know that it's secure as long as it's at rest or in motion until the recipient decides to open that file. And so there's some other technologies that I don't know if Al's spoken about, but of technologies, physically unclonable functions that we incorporate into our technology. There's a lot of items that build a quantum safe product. It's not one magic pill. And so when Al talks about some of these other technologies, those are all trickle down. You know that, hey, we patched the main holes, now these are the small ones, or these are back doors, or these are potential entry points. And so when he comes up with some of this technology, it doesn't make sense unless you look at the overall picture. And you have to be, this is one of those industries where I tell people it was easy to go in and out of healthcare because nothing changed for 30 years. And I was making a lot of the changes. We had an EMR system back in 1992. I daisy chained together 40 PCs, and we had the first EMR. And that was long before anybody knew what that was. And that's long before the cloud. So we're kind of forward thinking. We know the business case because we've been around, once you've been around 40 years, you've kind of seen everything. And I started at the beginning, and Al did too, of the computer desktop evolution, if you will, from the big IBM computers and Honeywells down to where we are today, telephones. But I think the other area where quantum is going to have a big play, and we're looking at this, is 5G and 6G and 7G platforms. That if you really want to be secure, every bit of data on your phone needs to be secured by that individual. One of the cool things about the blockchain, and we looked at this, I'm sure Dr. Carlson talked to you about this, 5 years ago we were looking at this. And we were looking at the SHA-256 and the hashing functions. And I said the weak point at that point in time was the wallet. That how you secure your private key. And no one believed us. They all thought it was ridiculous. And I had companies in the Austin area that were all incubators trying to pitch me their technology and what was going to happen. And, we're right. There's been a lot of hacks over the years. You guys have a unique product. I think that anybody that is not looking forward about what's coming down the pipe, and I don't know how quantum's going to affect what you're doing, but with 5G and quantum, it opens the door for a lot of problems. And, technology is wonderful. But sometimes older technology can be more secure than the new stuff. Because, until you've been hacked 100 times, you don't know. Look at Microsoft. They release stuff and there's so many problems with it. And then they ask, okay, well, we'll fix it in the next round. Well, you can't always do that when it comes to encryption. And you certainly can't do it when it comes to your money. And that was the things that we were looking at specifically is the banking system, SWIFT, and the hyper trading that's going on in the market. Those are all areas where you can lose $1 billion in a matter of seconds, milliseconds. And so we have spoken to so many companies about this quantum encryption and the environment and so forth, and no one seemed to get it until this year, until the election security, until the big hacks became really, SolarWind was the driver, if you will, for the federal government. I think that the Biden administration is going to release $500 billion to try to shore up, and they're going to throw money at everything, and 99% of it's not going to work.
Right.
It's going to fractionally work, but if you're just repackaging old technology, that's not a long-term fix. And we've had discussions with the CIA, the NSA, the NRO, the Pentagon, all divisions of the military, and they all know there's a problem. They just don't know how to move, and they're paralyzed. They've been paralyzed because no one wants to make a move, and it's the wrong move. But yet they spend billions of dollars at prime contractors and get nowhere. And SolarWind is a good example. I don't know how much money that's going to end up costing, but it's the like you said earlier, nation states and multinationals that everyone is hacking everyone. Mm-hmm. And when Phil was talking about that earlier. If we've been in the war room of some of these organizations that I mentioned, you can watch the live firing of the attacks, and it's all over the world. It's not specifically just China or Russia or Iran or North Korea. It's Brazil, it's Israel, it's Canada, it's everyone. It's a land grab, and they exploit these platforms that have been written 15, 20 years ago. And, when you've got a team of hackers and all they do is look for, backdoors or the 0-day attacks. And I mean, there's so many. We've been watching this and we're not even phased anymore, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And a lot of times it's just the simplicity itself is sometimes, air gapping is a very valuable concept that people don't even think about. Someone's like, well, it doesn't have to be connected, right?
Right.
to operate. So anyway, there's some interesting stuff there. Okay. Next, I had a question for Al, but there are a couple from the chat that you'll have to excuse me because I'm not certain if I understand it precisely, but I'm going to give you two. The first is the adversarial network. Is there an adversarial network used to detect patterns that might be left behind? If you have your data camouflage on, let's say, some message traffic.
Well, actually, I can answer that one fairly quickly. We're trying to design that now. The use of GANs is, we first suggested this back in November and wrote a paper on it that's been in an IEEE conference. And so we're actually working on that now. It hasn't been completed, but we're trying to detect the patterns. And if you take a look at what's happening, in the patterns, the problem is not that the patterns are still there, it's that the patterns are disjoint in different encryptions, so they cannot be correlated. And we're trying to figure out ways to see if we can find out how they're correlated.
Wow. Okay. That's nice. That's pretty cool. And we do have a demo, so we'll hit that right after this. Let's see here. Also from Jared, have you encountered any unique hardware-based adversarial networks besides? Okay.
Well, actually, we haven't at this point. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at what's happened, we're getting hits on the paper on ResearchGate at a massive rate. Since November, we've had over 500 reads on that paper alone. So this is just getting started, and it's we don't have very many of these. It's such a brand new field. We just don't have enough information yet.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And I'm trying to see if the demo. So let's run the demo of the
the data camouflage.
Yes. Data camouflage.
Hi, I'm Robert Carlson, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for our short demo on data camouflage. This exciting technology allows us to take data and apply a layer of obfuscation or data camouflage to disguise underlying patterns that bleed through using standard encryption methods. These patterns are important as they make breaking encryption faster and easier for the bad guys. For this example, we're using static images to illustrate the technology, but the same methods can be applied to audio, video, PDFs, and other documents and network traffic. We can mask the underlying data regardless of format. So let's open our first file, and we're just going to use the default password for this one. So here is Tux the Penguin, lovable Linux mascot, and high contrast example. So this first box here is AES 256, and you can see the radioactive outline of Tux. Box to its right is a simple substitution cipher, and the box below that, permutation cipher. You'll note that all three of these have this lovely vertical striping, as well as the radioactive penguin. This is one of the weaknesses of non-polymorphic technologies. If your data looks pretty much the same before, it's going to look pretty much the same afterwards. However, if you look at our lower left-hand image here, here's our same penguin with just data camouflaging. There's no striping and no radioactive penguin. And if you look over here, we've applied that same image with AES. So camouflaged AES, we still have that beautiful random distribution, meaning that this technology pairs very well with other encryption and adding an extra layer of security. And then right next to that is the AES and camouflage data safely decrypted. Down here, this graph shows the percent change across the image throughout the process. As you can see, it's about 50% with some noise. This process is non-uniform for your security. Now let's go ahead and change the password here. And I want you to see how the data changes between sessions. Exact same image going in. And there's Tux again, sporting some slightly different and maybe a little less radioactive colors, but pretty much the same. In our data camouflage, completely different picture and completely different graph. We can have a different picture every time because our security is not limited by the data that we started with. Now, Tux here's a pretty small image. He's only about 22 kilobytes. Here's a slightly larger grain-scale black and white image from World War II. So it's about 1,000 times longer. As you saw, still pretty fast to run. The image here in the substitution and permutation box is a little fuzzier, but if we look in AES, you can still kind of make out the outline of the couple, and there's this nice line running through the road that you can follow. Down here in data camouflaged squares, lines aren't there, can't see the couple. All right, one last image for you. This is a full color image of the American flag. AES does a reasonable job hiding the flag here, but if you look, you can still see that flagpole right there. And then down here in our data camouflage squares, much better. So that's data camouflaging in a nutshell. We keep your data safe by taking the underlying patterns and making them disappear. Thank you very much for your time.
See, that's nice. That's a very visual demo.
Yeah.
That's really nice, right?
Yeah, the interesting thing there is if you take a look, you can see that patterns are bleeding through from the encryption, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those patterns still bleed through if you're using text files. And you can actually see that. We didn't bring text files in because it takes a little more refined eye to be able to see the patterns in the text file. But what we're actually doing is we're actually damaging the file and randomly flipping the bits. The graph at the bottom shows what percentage of bits has been changed. We try and keep that around 50%. And you can see it goes up and down, and over the longer, time that you look at that and the amount of data, you can see that it settles down at around 50%. The interesting thing is we don't have any control when we begin over what parts of that are flipped. So these bits can happen in runs, and they flip up to 16 or 17 bits in a row that flip, and then there'll be some that don't flip, and then some that do flip, and it's really kind of messy. And that's an example of how you can use a simple encryption to hide a pattern inside a pattern.
Right. Very nice. Okay. So next question I have is for all three of you. Kind of depends on who wants to answer basically, but given specifically SolarWinds, FireEye, and all of the attacks that we don't know about or that are ongoing, because those are even ongoing, right? Are you confident that the next big hack can be stopped if there's enough proactive consideration by the people to be attacked?
I'll answer that one. If we keep with the present technology, no. Okay, the technology that we're using, yes, we can stop the attacks that are going on now, and to what degree we end up stopping them depends directly on who implements the newer technologies that we have.
All right. Okay. Very good. And then last question, probably if any of you want to answer this as well. So after the SolarWinds and FireEye hacks, what do we know about and what are we expecting related to funding and opportunity for cybersecurity and blockchain solutions? This is both government and commercial. What are you guys thinking?
Let me answer part of that, Alan. I know you'll answer the other part. Here's my theory on this, and this is my theory that the pain has to be high enough and expensive enough for people to change. I think SolarWinds is the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think it's the one that said to all of these enterprises, federal government, governments around the world, that what we thought was secure is not. And so that's the tipping point. That's the inflection point that we believe now, 2021, is a year of new technologies. And they're going to throw a lot of money at a lot of different things. I don't know what the Biden administration is going to spend. We have folks that work in DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and they're telling us that it's going to be a tidal wave of funding. And the government is going to throw hundreds of billions of dollars at this. Now, whether that all goes to the prime contractors or trickles down, every prime contractor that we've spoken to, Al and I, over the last 6 years, has said, well, you know, there's going to be a program. There is a program that's out for funding. I think all of those roadblocks are done because they know they can't continue the way they are, whether it's the VA, whether it's the federal government, the Pentagon, whether it's a drone manufacturer in Virginia, or if it's a tech company in Seattle. Everyone knows that the federal government is leading the way and kind of points the direction, even though we already know there's better technologies. Until they put the platinum seal on it, no one's going to move. And so we've been working with those salespeople in the DC area. And as soon as the election was over, we knew they were going to ramp this up. And we know the activity's already started. So
yeah, China has been leading the world in research dollars in quantum and in other encryption-related research. And if the rest of the world doesn't do this, we're going to get creamed. They've got to start matching it. And I think the federal government is finally realizing that.
Right. Yeah, it's fear and pain, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it takes to make hard changes. That's you know, well, at least you know, you guys have solved a lot of what's there and you have a lot of knowledge in the background, and at least you know, we're working together on this. So, I mean, it's really exciting what can be done. So let's all hope. I mean, 2021 is, like you said, I do think in several different industries and markets, you can already feel it. You can tell that it's the time is coming for a lot of this. So great stuff. Okay. So for each of you, Michael, you know, where can people follow you, you know, keep up, figure out you know, what you want them to know about?
Well, we've been very stealthy in our rollout of these technologies because our target base is the federal government and those agencies. We don't put stuff out in the public domain unless it is a commercial product. The data camouflage is one of those things, the compression. Those are products that after we've given the federal government the first shot, or large corporations the first shot, we're never going to be a consumer-based product as far as you're not going to download an app and it's going to be us. It's never going to work that way.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should either, because I don't think that's the market for us. So we're looking, you can follow me on LinkedIn, obviously. We've just been very stealthy in what we're doing until that acceptance happened. Phil has a larger footprint out there than I do at this point in time. So does Dr. Carlson. I'm talking to customers, potential customers every day. We're talking to countries around the world on a weekly basis. And so the other thing is the only area that I actually am involved on a daily basis is the healthcare industry. I've been consulting for a number of companies that are looking for the next level encryption. And, that market is a rich market for hackers. And the federal government, the VA especially, has, they're instituting new technologies all the time. And they're looking at us as a potential for one of those technologies to secure all that data. So, like I said, I don't put out a lot in the public domain. The people I speak to don't give out business cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you want to see the stuff that I'm working on, especially at the university level, go to ResearchGate. and take a look for Albert H. Carlson, and you'll see last year we published 5 papers in IEEE conferences that are up there. You can see the texts of most of my patents, and you can see some of the work I did in, believe it or not, research for railway systems. And so that's where you'll find most of what I'm doing.
Excellent.
And then, you can direct message me at LinkedIn for now. There's many places you can find me, but LinkedIn seems to be easy.
Excellent. Excellent. So, everybody go and follow everybody if you can. Lots of updates coming, and they will have different angles on it than, like, say, I would as well, that, you'll get a lot more specific and different contexts. So it's a good thing. So thank you guys all for joining. This was another really good show for getting good info out and how we're trying to solve things and what's going on. So watch us again here, Super Happy Dragon Lucky, every week, every Tuesday, and live. And then, and it's on Periscope, Twitter, which I don't know what we're going to do when Periscope goes away. I don't know. And I believe LinkedIn and YouTube. So we'll probably be adding more platforms as we can. But anyway, that's where you watch right now. Also follow Real Denizens, Dragonchain Gang, and Jotaro on Twitter. Like, comment, and definitely subscribe to the channel if you can. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much. See you guys next week.
Thank you.